Please adhere to YouTube's selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behaviors shown in this video. All videos are produced in a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Please do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during the video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Alright, so today I'm going to be smoking and reviewing the Benson Hedges Superkings green cigarettes from the UK, which are supposedly a mild to medium strength cigarette that is marketed as being a quote-unquote great alternative to menthol cigarettes that offer a fresh new flavor, being a good alternative to now banned menthol cigarettes with a mid-range nicotine content. Well, that's what they supposedly are at least. Due to the fact that menthol cigarettes were banned in the UK a few years back, alternatives with gimmicks have popped up over time. From smell capsules that flavor cigarettes when inserted into packs, to cigarettes containing an additive in the filter that smooths the smoke like menthol, but without the taste, there are many different marketing ploys. Now, if I had to guess, this pack right here probably employs the latter method, but since there's not much information about the Benson Hedges Superkings green cigarettes online, I really don't know for sure. And so as such, I am very curious to find out how these are overall, what they're gonna be like, and what I'm gonna think of them. How will a cigarette from the UK that is marketed as being an alternative to the now banned menthol cigarettes actually be? Well, I don't know, but I'm very excited to find out. Let me tell y'all what. Thank you so much to Mr. Raymond Lee Yang for having been kind enough to contribute this pack of cigarettes right here to the channel for me to smoke and make a full review on. I really do appreciate the support. I really do appreciate the contribution. Thank you so much once again to Mr. Raymond Lee Yang himself. I do suppose without further ado, I should probably go ahead and quickly cover the packaging of this pack now, shouldn't I? After that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get this pack all opened up. Go ahead and take a look at the inside of the lid and of the pack in general, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and rip the foil all out. I'm going to go ahead and get one of the cigarettes all out as well and take a look at, well, the look of the cigarettes, the smell of the cigarettes, the quality of the cigarettes, and the blend of the cigarettes. And then after that I'm going to go ahead and get one of the Benson Hedges Superkings green cigarettes from the UK, all lit up for the first time, and I'm going to go ahead and find out just how these are, what they're like, and what I think of them. And once I'm done smoking a cigarette or two and I get my fill of nicotine, I am then going to go ahead and, well, give you guys my final thoughts on these cigarettes, and I'm going to give them a rating as well. As said, though, first off, we've got to cover the packaging, which is UK standardized plain packaging. And it's not great, frankly put. I don't really like this packaging. It's standardized plain packaging, really nothing I can do about it, frankly put, and there's nothing anybody can do about this packaging because it's standardized by the UK government. There's nothing you can do to make it look any better than it does, which isn't very good. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this packaging. It's standardized plain packaging, and that is what it is. There's a warning label up top taking up the majority of the front of the pack space. We can see in white on a black background, it just says smoking causes emphysema right there. Yep, that's not wrong. I'm gonna give them that. That's not wrong. Smoking can cause emphysema, but that's not gonna stop me from smoking cigarettes. Under that in black on a yellow background, there's just like a little quit smoking thing right here and a little bit of a website saying if you need help to quit smoking, visit that website and everything like that kind of thing. And then under that there is an image of a black lung on a white background with a border of black going all the way around the image itself. And that's all there is to the warning label. Pretty basic stuff, nothing too gruesome, nothing too grotesque, thankfully, but still not great because there's a warning label on the front of the pack of cigarettes, and I would just prefer if it wasn't there, but that's just how UK packaging is today, and it is what it is. Moving on below the warning label, we go to a green background, a dark green, almost sort of, I'd have to say, I'm trying to think of the right way to describe the green, but it's sort of a just very basic green background. It's not meant to be particularly memorable. In fact, it's actually designed to be forgettable, and it's also designed to be a little bit uglier than not. Now, personally, I don't think that this green is ugly. I actually have a shirt that's a very similar color to it, and I actually really like the color of that shirt in all honesty, but it is a more forgettable color than not. I will not deny that. And on that green background, in a standardized font, in a standardized white color, it just says Benson and Hedges right there, and then under that in a smaller font, it just says Superkings Green right there, and that's just the variety name. Under that, it just says 20 cigarettes right there in the corner, and that's all there is to the front of the packaging. Yep, it's standardized UK pack. Get more just below. get my words just a little bit jumbled up, and then got my words just a little bit jumbled up right after that as well. But yeah, it's just standardized UK plain packaging. It's ugly, it doesn't look good, and it's standardized, and I don't like it. I don't like it. No, not a fan. Not a fan. To nobody's surprise. But that's all there is to the front of the packaging. Moving on to the back, we can see warning label up top once again with the text down here rather than being up here, with the image up here rather than being down here. Just says UK duty paid right there on the back. And that's all there is to the back of the packaging. Moving on to this side, we can see the barcode right there on a white background with green lines making up the barcode. Then it just says smoking kills, quit now as another warning label on this side. Well, don't care, we ball. And that's all it says on this side of the packaging. Moving on to the other side, we can see we get the UK tax stamp right there, which is an extremely mid tax stamp, frankly put. Out of all the cigarette tax stamps I've seen from throughout the world, this has got to be one of the most mid ones I've ever seen. It has a mildly complex design that kind of looks like DNA or something like that kind of thing. It was interesting the first time I saw it, but now that I've seen it a variety of times, I've become kind of bored of it, and it would be really nice if there was a more pretty tax stamp on this packaging, but I do suppose that would kind of defeat the point of it having plain packaging to begin with, now wouldn't it? I've seen many better tax stamps though, this one mid to say the least. Moving on below the tax stamp though, we can see we get another warning label, just says tobacco smoke contains over 70 substances known to cause cancer. Doesn't everything though? Doesn't everything? Anything can cause cancer if consumed in enough quantities, kind of thing. Water can cause cancer if you try hard enough, I'm sure. So the fact that they're saying that tobacco smoke contains over 70 substances known to cause cancer is, in my opinion, just a total load of horse crap. Because anything can cause cancer, anything can and will cause cancer, and just because tobacco smoke contains over 70 substances known to cause cancer doesn't mean something else isn't going to give you cancer anyway. It's just how it is. That's just how it is. Now, is tobacco smoke dangerous? Can smoking tobacco give you cancer? Absolutely. But they should really have a clarification, a little bit of an asterisk saying, well, just because tobacco smoke contains 70 substances known to cause cancer doesn't mean that something else can't give you cancer. Because with this, they're kind of implying that, like, this can give you cancer, but they're not saying that everything else can give you cancer too, kind of thing. They need to acknowledge that. What is the UK government doing? I don't trust their health authorities, let me tell y'all what. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I'm just messing around. But either way, I do legitimately find this warning label to be a little bit BS, I will acknowledge, but that's all there is to this side of the packaging. Moving on to the top of the pack, we can see it just says Benson Hedges Superkings green right there on that standardized green and that standardized white font, and that's all there is to the top of the packaging. Moving on to the bottom, we can see it just says Benson Hedges Superkings green once again, just kind of shoved towards the bottom a little bit more so than not, due to there being a barcode and some numbers up there on a black background. Those numbers just read LECNIN 2C 6N4HLO. I don't know what those mean, but if you guys know, let me know in the comments down below. And I feel like I gotta sneeze. But I think we're okay for the moment. Alrighty though, well that's all there is to the packaging. Overall, hideous, ugly, could be worse though. Could have a graphic warning label on it. Like, this is graphic, but not the worst I've ever seen. I've seen far worse. Could have somebody's mangled trench foot on the cover, I do suppose. Go ahead and put the cellophane in my backpack. I'm going to go and put the sheet of paper I had for the beginning of this video in my backpack as well, so it doesn't fly away, just in case it gets a bit breezy. And let's go ahead and quickly cover the quality of the packaging, which overall is average. That's not a bad thing. It's just average kind of thing. And average just means it's pretty much the same as every other cigarette pack I've tried. There are some rare packs that are above average quality, but this one's just average, and that basically just means it stays together, it gets the job done, but it's not like the best quality thing I've ever seen. Just feeling the cigarette pack, it's very much that of a, I'd have to say, smooth paperboard texture. Actually, pretty solid texture in my opinion. Feels pretty nice under finger, no complaints on my behalf. And overall, does this look better with the cellophane off than on? No, it does not. Let's go ahead and get this pack all opened up now, and let's go ahead and take a look at the inside of the pack. And we can see there's some information on the lid right there. It just says that these cigarettes are made by Japan Tobacco International. And then they've got their customer service contact center, email, phone number, everything like that as well. But yes, these Benson Hedges cigarettes are made by Japan Tobacco International, not Philip Morris, like Benson Hedges are made in the United States. Or, yeah, Benson Hedges in the United States are made by, well, So Benson & Hedges in the United States are made by Philip Morris. Benson & Hedges in Canada are made by Benson & Hedges Rothmans Inc., which is a subsidiary of Philip Morris International. But Benson & Hedges in the UK are, interestingly enough, actually made by Japan Tobacco International. And I'm trying to remember exactly why, but I can't remember exactly why. There's some reason behind it, I'm sure. But that's pretty much all there is to the inside of the lid right there. Moving on to this area down here, we can see standardized cigarette insert right there, just a standardized white cigarette insert, nothing particularly interesting. And we can see a standardized foil as well, no design on the foil, just a standardized silver foil. It's foily on one side and foily on the other side, but not quite as foily. Let's go ahead and rip it out, and rips out a little bit of firmness, satisfying pull out if I do say so myself, just like when I pulled out of your mom last night. And, overall, clean rip, can't complain. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my backpack so I don't be littering, of course. And now let's go ahead and get one of these cigarettes out and take a look at them for the very first time. And let's go ahead and smell the cigarette first off, I do think. And overall, I gotta admit, smells interesting, smells different initially. Doesn't smell like a menthol cigarette, but it's got almost sort of an orangey smell to it, interestingly enough. Almost like a citrusy, tangerine, orange smell. That is very interesting. That is very odd, and I gotta admit, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting to get the smell of tangerine or orange from this cigarette right here, but that's exactly what I'm getting. Yeah. I know menthol cigarettes are banned in the UK. Flavored cigarettes are banned as well. Why does this smell like tangerine/orange? Maybe it's the tobacco. I've got no idea. It could very well be the tobacco. Maybe the tobacco itself smells like oranges. I've had that happen before. Just never with cigarettes, only ever with pipe tobacco. Either way, though, very, very, very interesting. Yeah, smells like a mildly sweet, citrusy, sour tangerine or orange. In my personal opinion, that's very much the smell I'm getting from this cigarette. That is very interesting, I will acknowledge. And maybe a little bit of like cedarwood underneath that sort of citrusy tangerine-like smell. Very interesting smell overall, I gotta admit. Moving on to the look of the cigarette itself, we can see we get a white cigarette filter, a standardized text at the bottom of the filter, and then we just get white paper under that. The white paper has horizontal lines going all the way across, just like that. And the white filter itself has one line of perforation on the, filter. The dots themselves are spread out interestingly. It does not appear to be an even spread, which is odd. Usually it's very even all the way around. Not in this case, though. But the dots themselves are bigger than not the biggest I've ever seen by any means, but there are a decent amount of them. So I definitely do think that this cigarette is going to be more airy and light than not, without a doubt. And at the bottom of the white filter, we can see it just says B&H, Benson & Hedges, green right there. Doesn't say Superkings because I assume Superkings just means 100 size. And, it's pretty visually obvious that this is a 100s size cigarette. And yep, that's pretty much all there is to the look of the cigarette. Standardized look. Cigarettes in the UK have a standardized look, just like the packaging, which is a shame, but it is what it is. Moving on to the blend of the cigarette itself, we can see it is a surprisingly bright blend of tobacco, I will acknowledge. And we can see it is, surprisingly bright. I'd have to say yeah, it's a bright, it's a bright to medium tobacco blend. I wouldn't define it as being a purely bright tobacco blend. I've definitely seen brighter blends, without a doubt. There are still some more medium aspects to the blend we're seeing, especially like down here and whatnot. But the very top, that's definitely a bit brighter than that. So I'd have to say a bright to medium blend of tobacco is an accurate way of putting how the blend of this cigarette actually looks. And just to make sure I'm not like getting this sort of orangey smell from somewhere else. One of my neighbors is mowing their grass right now. I'm smelling sort of a grassy smell in the air. I think maybe some of that sort of orangey smell is kind of coming from the grass, but just smelling these up close, I'd have to say that orangey smell is still kind of prevalent. Maybe some of that smell is coming from the grass. Maybe I'm getting a little bit confused just because of the smell in the air right now. That could very well be it. But nonetheless, I do really still feel like that there is an orangey sort of smell to the cigarette itself. And I'd have to say, smell-wise overall, I'm very much getting that of a... yeah, sort of semi-sweet, sort of citrusy sour sort of smell with undertones of, I'd have to say, a little bit of cedarwood, maybe a little bit of nuttiness, and that's really all I'm noticing. The cedarwood is more prevalent in nuttiness, and honestly, I'm not really sure if I'm really getting that. I kind of feel like it's going to be in there, but I think it might be my brain tricking myself into thinking it's there. Really, all I'm getting is that sort of orangey smell. The freshly mowed grass, I gotta admit, it doesn't make it super easy to tell exactly what the smell of this cigarette is, especially since this is a more mild-smelling cigarette than not. Overall, though, cigarette smells good. Can't complain. Now, can I? I do suppose, without further ado, I should probably go ahead and get this cigarette right here all lit up. I should probably go ahead and get to smoking one of the Benson Hedges Superkings green cigarettes from the UK for the first time and find out just how a non-menthol cigarette that's marketed as being a menthol alternative from the UK actually is. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to smoking. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying. And right off the bat, there's definitely a cooling agent in the filter. I can say that without a doubt. Now, I've tried, I want to say, 1 or 2 cigarettes so far that have had cooling agents in the filter that are not menthol cigarettes. They're non-menthol cigarettes that still have cooling agents in the filter. I've tried one that I picked up in the county in my local area that I thought was going to start getting sold around here, but it actually never did. I'm not exactly sure how I was able to find that in my state, but I was. I personally did not find them to be particularly good, in all honesty. I thought the quality was bad, I thought the taste was bad, and I didn't like how the non-menthol cooling agent came through. Not my thing. But this is a lot better. This is actually not bad. And there's definitely a cooling agent in the filter. It kind of cools down the smoke a little bit and almost gives you a sort of menthol-y taste. Like, it's not menthol. I will acknowledge the flavor I'm getting from this cigarette right now is not menthol. But it almost comes across as being such. Very interesting. And interestingly enough as well, while I wouldn't say I'm getting sort of a typical menthol flavor, I am still getting a cooler smoke than not that almost has a sort of icy flavor to it. Or, yeah, I'd say icy. It's not really like menthol-y, but it's sort of like a minty sort of ice, which is really interesting because menthol is banned in the UK, so I'm honestly surprised that these are allowed. This is way better than the non-menthol menthol alternative cigarettes I've tried in the past. Way better. This is far superior. Wow. Now, still not exactly to my personal preference. I'm not really one for menthol. I'd much rather just get the pure taste of tobacco, and while this cigarette definitely does do a better job at that than normal menthol cigarettes, you can definitely still tell that whatever is in the filter is definitely still covering up the flavor of the tobacco just a little bit. Not as much as menthol, but still just a little bit nonetheless. It's overall very interesting, though. Very interesting, I gotta admit. I was not expecting this cigarette to be quite like it is. I was expecting it to have a cooling agent, yes, but I was expecting the cooling agent to be tasteless, and it's not tasteless in my opinion. Now, maybe for all legal reasons, it is tasteless. I've got no idea. Maybe it's the tobacco giving it the flavor, or maybe there's something else going on. I'm not exactly sure. As said, there's not really a lot of information about these cigarettes online, so there's a lot of unknowns. But what I do know is that these are interesting cigarettes, and that I'm very glad to be trying them. Excuse me. Very unique. Excuse me. And definitely better than the non-menthol Newports from California, that's for sure. Definitely far superior, far superior. The flavor of the cigarette itself is very much that of a, I'd have to say, it's a much cooler, more moist, almost sort of vapory flavor than not, that is quite smooth, and it has undertones of a sort of, I'd have to say, yeah, sort of citrusy, almost sort of tangerine-like flavor with, well, just a little bit of like cedar wood underneath. There's a little bit of spice coming from the cedar wood, but that's about all that's going on in the flavor from what I can tell right now, at least. Not the most interesting cigarettes in the world taste-wise. There's really no dynamicness going on or anything like that. But just for novelty reasons, just because this is the first time ever having one, they're quite interesting to me, without a doubt. Body is, I would have to say, a medium-sized body. A little bit more airy than not, without a doubt, and just not the biggest body overall, density-wise. And so I'd have to say overall, not a small body, not a big body, but a medium body, in my personal opinion. And for the strength of these cigarettes, which is, well, not the strongest, I'd have to say these are very much more of a medium strength cigarette. I wouldn't say that they're a mild or a light cigarette. I would say that these are more of a medium cigarette, but for being a medium cigarette, the body size is not terrible, especially when considering the fact that these are 100s / Superkings. But overall, interesting. I'm definitely going to need a second one. I can say that without a doubt. And as I'm continuing to smoke, I am continuing to notice more flavor. So I think these cigarettes, they have a taste that you notice at the beginning, but it kind of changes as you go. Not to any significant degree. The flavor is still not anything insane, not anything amazing, but not bad. Very interesting. This first cigarette I'm having, I'm just kind of trying to figure out how these are as a whole. I'll cover the details with the next one, I do think. Definitely, though, there is still some roughness. The sort of cool smoke, sort of more vapory smoke, is a different mouthfeel, is a different texture than smoke that I'm used to as an American. As somebody who normally smokes American spirits, I get a very smoky sort of mouthfeel generally, and this is definitely different. It's more vapory. It almost has a sort of halfway between a vape and a cigarette sort of mouthfeel, which is very interesting. Not my first time experiencing that, but it does surprise me every time. But that was the first cigarette. Interesting, I think, is the right way of describing the Benson Hedges Superkings Green. And unique, I think, is another worthwhile descriptor. I gotta admit, initially, better than the non-menthol Newports I've tried. without a doubt. Better than non-menthol cigarettes I've tried from the United States in general, without a doubt. I have not been particularly impressed by any of them. And, well, when I say non-menthol, I'm not talking about cigarettes that are just non-menthol. I'm not talking about like the American Spirit, like let's say the Blues or Marlboro Reds or something like that kind of thing. When I say non-menthol cigarettes from the United States, I'm meaning cigarettes that are marketed as being a menthol alternative without the menthol. That's what I mean. And so, yeah, when compared to a non-menthol cigarette from the United States that was never designed to have any menthol, these are, in my opinion, as somebody who's not really a menthol person, pretty mid. But as far as cigarettes go, for cigarettes that are marketed as being a non-menthol cigarette that is still something that menthol smokers would want to smoke, this is something I don't mind one bit. And this is something that I think is actually a solid alternative. Like, not the most amazing alternative in the world, but definitely better than nothing. And I'm actually kind of impressed by these just because I've had such a bad experience with the non-menthol versions of ex-menthol cigarettes from the United States. I really haven't had a very good experience with like the non-menthol Newports and stuff like that kind of thing. I've tried one of the packs. It's one of the worst cigarettes I've tried in the last couple of years. Genuinely. Horrible cigarette. Horrible. Which is such a shame because they're kind of a meme. But genuinely just terrible cigarettes. But the Benson Hedges Superkings Green, they're not bad. They're not bad. I'm not going to say that they're amazing. I'm not going to say that they're legitimately good. But they're certainly not bad. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I think I should probably get another one all lit up so I can actually go ahead and let you guys know the details of the flavor, body, strength, roughness, smoothness, and everything like that. So let's go ahead and readjust my tripod real quick because I'm going to want to grab myself a little bit of a screenshot for the thumb of this video as well. And let's go ahead and get this pack all opened up once again and get another one of these cigarettes all out. Just as I have now done. Get my lighter out of my pocket. And now that I've got my lighter out of my pocket, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this cigarette right here all lit up, and let's go ahead and get to smoking a second Benson Hedges Superkings Green cigarette from the UK and talk about the details of these cigarettes. Yes, sir, and I'm saying. Got some sort of bug that landed on my hand and I just smushed it by accident. I was just trying to flick it off. It is what it is. Well, hopefully one of those will do as a screenshot for this video. We will find out. But, interesting. Once again, as with the first one, interesting, unique, and definitely different, without a doubt. Now, there's definitely still a menthol-ish thing going on in the filter. But it's not menthol. It's not menthol. But the flavor I'm getting from these cigarettes is very much that of a sort of it's not menthol, but it's a very close alternative. It's interesting because the more that I say that these are not a menthol cigarette, the more I go, these are pretty similar to like just an insanely mild menthol cigarette, like just with an insanely mild menthol flavor. And that's really the right way of describing them. I have smoked, I think, 1 or 2 cigarettes that are just like really, really, really super mild menthols. Maybe not even strength-wise, just the menthol flavor itself is super mild. It's not overwhelming at all. And this kind of comes across like one of those. But the menthol hit itself is actually quite significant. It's just that the flavor of the menthol is really not significant at all. And the flavor I'm getting is very much that of a, I'd have to say, icy, slightly pepperminty, but not mentholy flavor, with undertones of a sort of slightly sweet, but more sour than sweet, citrusy, tangerine-y, orange flavor, with undertones of a little bit of cedarwood, a little bit of nuttiness, and that's about it. A little bit creaminess as well, I'd have to say. Overall, definitely interesting. Definitely interesting. When I first got my hands on this pack of cigarettes, I was not expecting this. When I first opened up the pack of cigarettes before smelling, I was not expecting this. They're not insanely good. They're not insanely amazing cigarettes by any means. I'm not going to say that they are. But they're very interesting just because they're like no other non-menthol, menthol competitor cigarette I've ever seen before. Or like non-menthol, ex-menthol cigarette. I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, because just saying non-menthol just makes me think of just normal cigarettes that were never meant to have menthol. But this is a normal cigarette that's meant to have menthol but doesn't have menthol, but has a menthol alternative in the filter to still smooth the smoke out. It's interesting. I think I might need another one low-key. Because I'm not gonna lie, this cigarette is kind of throwing me for a loop. And they're mild enough for me to have another one as well. So, might as well have another, right? I'm not really feeling too big of a buzz right now. Just got a light buzz going. So, yeah, I might go for another. But with this first one, I do definitely want to finish talking about the flavor. So, let's finish talking about the flavor. And yeah, I'd have to say the flavor is very much that of a, yeah. It's a very mild flavor overall, very mild. But it's very much that of a, I'd have to say, slightly icy, slightly pepperminty, slightly sweet, tangy, citrusy, tangerine/orange flavor with undertones of, I'd have to say, a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of cream/butteriness, a little bit of cedarwood, and that's really all I'm noticing. And I have to say that's what the flavor is like overall. Very interesting, without a doubt. And one of the interesting things about the mouthfeel of cigarettes, one of the things I've noticed about cigarettes from the UK as a whole, is that some of them tend to have drier mouthfeels than not. Now, in the United States, cigarettes tend to not really have a dry mouthfeel, but not really a not dry mouthfeel either. Of course, it depends on the cigarette. There certainly are cigarettes with drier mouthfeels than not. The American Spirit Blues are one of them, in my personal opinion. But even when compared to American Spirit Blues, cigarettes from the UK generally, in my opinion, have a drier mouthfeel than not. And they tend to just taste a bit drier, even when not actually being physically dry, as all tobacco has some amount of moisture in it, especially when sealed up and everything like that. Cigarettes can go stale over times, but these were not. The ones I've tried in the past were not. But the mouthfeel for the Benson Hedges Superkings Green, due to whatever they put in the filter, the non-menthol alternative, which is meant to still cool your throat, definitely does cool your throat. Not as well as menthol, but it's still there. And while there is still some roughness and some dryness coming from the cigarette, it does still certainly have an actual smoke sort of throat hit to an extent. There's certainly also that menthol alternative, whatever they put in the filter, in there as well. And that's cooling the smoke down, making it more vapory, but then there's also still that normal cigarette throat hit. When describing the mouthfeel and throat hit of the Benson Hedges Superkings Green, the right way of describing it, in my opinion, the best way I can think of, is to say that it's halfway between a vape and a normal cigarette. Yeah, I'd have to say the mouthfeel, the throat hit, is halfway between a vape and a normal cigarette, which is unique without a doubt. Let's go ahead and get another one lit up. After I take a sip of water, actually, I'm kind of needing a sip of water. It's been like over 35 minutes since I last had a sip of water, so I'm needing one. Let's go ahead and get another one of these cigarettes all out of the pack, and let's have another one. I think the real question is, do I prefer this over a normal menthol cigarette? I'm not really a menthol cigarette type of person. It's not my thing. I prefer just the pure taste of tobacco. Do I prefer this over a normal menthol cigarette? Good question. I'll have to think about that. Little piece of ash fell on my finger and then fell onto my shirt. Don't want to get no burn holes on my shirt because I quite like my shirt. I will acknowledge my shirt's very comfy and it looks great in my opinion. I quite like it. I will admit, I do feel fancy. Pure white cigarette, longer than not. I feel fancy smoking this cigarette, I'm not gonna lie. But now that I've covered what the flavor is like, let's go uncover everything else. So body-wise, body is very much that of a small to medium-sized body in my personal opinion, but it definitely gets bigger the lower you get, the closer you get to the filter. So I can definitely say that the body does change time, or does change and get a little bit bigger over time, to say correctly. I would say that airflow-wise, the airflow is perfectly fine. Not particularly constricted. Maybe a little bit of a heavier airflow than some cheaper 100s or Super Kings size cigarettes in the United States. But nothing too significant by any means. About the same airflow as something like, let's say, a Marlboro in my personal opinion. And draw-wise, it's not quite as airy as you might think. However, there is still airiness in there without a doubt. The perforation is doing its job. That is for sure. Yeah. I'd have to say the draw is very much that of a medium to light draw with a decent amount, but not an insane amount, of airiness. And roughness and smoothness wise, I'd have to say it's very much that of a low to mid 3 to 4, depending on the hit and depending on where you are in the cigarette. And I'd have to say strength-wise, it's very much that of a mid to maybe high 2 out of 4. I'd say more of a mid 2 out of 4 though, in all honesty. But it's got a nice throat hit even with the lack of strength that these cigarettes have. They are very much that of a mild, light to medium strength cigarette, although I would say that they are more of a light medium cigarette rather than being a truly light cigarette. And overall, I'm getting no sort of chemical taste. I'm getting no sort of additive taste, no sort of paper taste, which is all very nice. One thing to mention about these cigarettes is that the paper itself is a little bit flaky. So as I've been smoking them today, I have gotten some flakes of ash on my shirt and whatnot kind of thing, which is not amazing. But it is what it is. It's not the biggest deal in the world by any means. And overall, really the most interesting thing about this cigarette is, I'd have to say, the flavor and the mouthfeel. Because the flavor is really a menthol but no menthol flavor. That's really how it is. It's menthol without the menthol. That's what the flavor really kind of is like. And you're still able to taste the tobacco a little bit underneath, but the menthol but no menthol is very much still the predominant flavor as you would have from a normal menthol cigarette. But do I prefer this over a normal menthol cigarette? No, I don't. I don't prefer this over a normal menthol cigarette. However, that doesn't mean I like menthol cigarettes more than this. It just means that I don't prefer this over menthol cigarettes. I'd say this is about the same. I actually like this as much as I do menthol cigarettes, which is not as much as normal non-menthol tobacco that is designed to be, well, with no menthol at all from just the beginning. It's just a non-menthol cigarette like Marlboro Reds or American Spirit Blacks or American Spirit Blues or something like that kind of thing. Yeah, I'd have to say, when it comes to this cigarette at least, I like it just as much as menthol, which isn't really saying much. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. That's really the right way of putting it. I generally don't mind menthol cigarettes. If I'm handed one, I'll smoke it. It's not something I buy for myself very often, but if I'm really craving one, I will have one. And this is certainly, I'd have to say, filling the menthol craving without a doubt, but just without the menthol flavor, without the overwhelming sort of spearmint menthol flavor that I'm used to as an American. But it's still got a non-menthol mentholiness to it, which is very interesting. Interesting cigarettes, I can say that. Something that I don't prefer over menthol cigarettes, but I also don't prefer menthol cigarettes over this, but nonetheless a very interesting cigarette. Let's go ahead and stub it out real quick. And I want to, real quick as well, cover where the filter itself actually starts. It's got a little bit of piece of ash on my pants. As said, the paper is a little bit flaky. I don't actually get any sort of paper taste in this cigarette, but a little bit flaky nonetheless, and I just hit my funny bone. That it's not very funny. It is funny, it is funny. But, just taking a look at where the filter begins. It begins right about halfway between the B and H and green text right there, right about where my finger's tapping right now. I'd have to say stubbing this cigarette out where I stubbed it out is the ideal. I stubbed it out right about at where the thick paper is, and that's the ideal place to stub one of these cigarettes out in my personal opinion. We can see that the filter, the perforation on the filter, to say it correctly, does do its job significantly. However, the tar in the filter is still spread out without a doubt, giving you a less concentrated airflow. So, I'd have to say that while there is perforation on this filter, and while we do see the predominant amount of tar in the middle, as we can see that's the darkest area, the tar does still spread out, and the perforation does not make this cigarette have a reduced sort of string of smoke going into your mouth and into your lungs and whatnot kind of thing, as some cigarettes that have a lot of airflow can do at times. And yeah, while the perforation is doing its job, it's nothing insane, giving these a more full taste than not, I'd have to say. And yeah, that was the Benson Hedges Superkings green cigarettes from the UK. Smoked 3 of them. Don't normally smoke 3 cigarettes during reviews, generally only 2, but these were very interesting cigarettes, and I needed 3 of them to really get a good idea of how they were. And now that I have a good idea of how they are, what are my final thoughts on this pack right here, the Benson Hedges Superkings green? Well, I'm going to have to say they're all right. They're okay. They're nothing insane. They're interesting. Without a doubt, they are very interesting cigarettes. But when it comes to actually smoking them, they're nothing insane kind of thing. The quality is solid. The taste is interesting. But it's nothing insane. And frankly put, I'd still much rather have a non-menthol cigarette that is designed to be a non-menthol cigarette with no sort of cooling agent in the filter or anything like that kind of thing. I would still much rather have one of those. For me, this is something that personally I would not buy with my own money. Not because it's a genuinely bad cigarette or anything like that, but instead just because I would much rather just smoke a normal cigarette, in all honesty. But either way, the Benson Hedges Superkings Green are still quite interesting smokes, and they're smokes that I'm very glad that I've tried, and they're smokes that I do think I will enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of. Overall, I wouldn't buy these with my own money, but if somebody handed me one of these, or handed me a pack of this, I'd smoke them. I'd smoke them without a doubt. But yeah, overall, not the greatest cigarettes in the world. Interesting, unique, without a doubt, and when compared to non-menthol, menthol competitors from ex-menthol markets, these are definitely one of the better ones I've tried. But they're just about the same as menthol cigarettes to me. Now, if you're from the UK and you like menthol cigarettes and you want a menthol cigarette alternative, I do think that these are a solid option. And I think the right way to consume these, in all honesty, is not to smoke them raw, not to smoke them straight as I was during today's video. It is instead to either put a pop capsule in the filter and then pop that, or to put some sort of smell thing in the pack once you open it up, leave it there for a couple hours, and then smoke a cigarette that now tastes like it's like the whatever strip you put in smells. That would be the way to smoke these, in my personal opinion. But either way, still smoking these straight, smoking these raw, as I did. Not bad. Didn't mind them, I'll acknowledge. And overall, can't really complain too much. Can't really complain too much, in all honesty. As said, not cigarettes that are my personal thing, but I can definitely see why these might be some people's things. If you live in the UK or another menthol market that no longer has menthols, or an ex-menthol market to say it correctly, then I do think that these could be a decent option. I do think they could be. But they're nothing insane. They're nothing insane by any means. But they're interesting just because it's a non-menthol cigarette that tastes like it should have menthol and tastes like it does have menthol, but it's not menthol. That's really what makes these cigarettes interesting. Overall, though, for me, they're not my thing. And the rating I'm going to be giving them is a solid high 2 out of 4. Not something I'd buy with my own money, hence why it's getting a 2 out of 4, but still something that I think some people may enjoy, and still a cigarette that I'm going to enjoy smoking the rest of the pack of, hence why it's getting a high 2 out of 4. Something along the lines of a 2.7, 2.8 out of 4, I'd have to say. Overall, that's been the review of the Benson Hedges Superkings Green cigarettes from the UK. Hope you guys have enjoyed watching this review today. If you guys have, of course, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these cigarettes and what you guys just think of them as a whole, if you guys have tried them before. And if you guys haven't tried them before, let me know what you guys think of the whole concept of a menthol but no menthol cigarette. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video today. If you guys have enjoyed watching this video today, of course, like, subscribe for more content. I have my Instagram, my book, my merch, my P.O. box. Well, my P.O. box is actually going to be closed by the time this video goes up, but I've got my website. Go check that out, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, y'all. Till the next one, stay safe and peace, and have a great one. Yes, sir, you know what I'm saying?